Are we live now?
We are.
Cool. So we can start. Welcome, everyone. This is once again your host, and we are having this continuing our beautiful topics, which is "We Are All One" is a theme where we give freedom of free spirited, which is all about emotional well-being of our humans, that we are all at the moment struggling in this uncertain times. However, this is all part and parcel, and today is a topic which is absolutely resonating with the emotions. And so we are going to talk about emotional trauma and what more can we experience when we are born. It's also an event, and sometimes it could be overwhelmed, sometimes it could be overjoyed, but that's something that we are going to discuss and uncover a lot of things about it, because what is really trauma means, and why is it a harsh word? Is it a unpopular word, or is it not good or bad? It's nothing of that sort. It's all to do with our emotions, and emotional trauma is a topic which is quite vast. It can happen with one single event, it can happen on the spur of the moment, or it can happen over a period of time, but it is all within us, which is our emotions that come out and speak out. So let's not further delay, and we are going to continue all this. We are all one, which is freedom of free spirited. We are here to talk freely and open our minds and soul to discuss this topic and accept the way we are, the who we are. So we are going to continue with this beautiful theme and topics that we are with great speakers. And today there is a fantastic speaker who has been preaching online and also has been coaching and is a part and parcel of this topic, which we will uncover from her. But with that, I'm going to go and further to Beck, who is our beautiful host, who has been doing this for the last 6 episodes we completed on different topics. And today is a topic that I think may resonate with a lot of people. So welcome, Beck. I hand over to you to continue this beautiful journey.
Thank you, Shailesh. And I'd just like to extend our welcome to our listeners today. So I'd like to introduce Kim. So Kim is our guest speaker today. She's a founder of Aperture Hub, and they have a focus on building the well-being and connection with their clients and draw on a holistic approach to do so. She has qualifications in psychology, social science, and is a researcher and trainer and an educator. So I am very honored to have her on board with us today to chat all about emotional trauma and sort of share some of her tools that she has with us today that we can apply in our own personal lives. So I'd just like to extend a big welcome to Kim.
Thank you, Beck. It's very nice to be here, and I just want to thank you first for the invite. Now, sharing my screen, I've just noticed it says host disabled.
Yeah. I'm going to share. Oh, let's get rid of mine. Let me make you host, and then we will be able to share your screen. Give me 1 second. Alrighty, so now I've made you host. So you should be able to share your screen now. Is that?
Okay.
Has that worked?
Well, hang on a moment. I'm just going to. Can you see any?
There we go.
Pardon?
So down the bottom, you should be able to. It should just say share screen.
Yeah, I can't find my slide in the actual screen.
Oh.
No. Unless I do it this way. Can people see that? No?
No, I can't see yours, no.
Okay.
Are you able to share your screen though, Kim?
Yeah, so when you go to share your screen, up comes a folder and you should be able to see your PowerPoint on there, but it's not showing in the folder. Look, I might just be a talking head and make it available. It can be available for people. Happy to stick it, a copy in our chat screen for people to refer to a bit later. So thank you for the introduction. So yes, I have a passion for psychology and social science, and I've worked in the mental health field in Australia here for more than 8 years. And then 2020, with the, I guess, outbreak of COVID and certain events that followed, I resigned to start up my own business to focus on connection and wellbeing. And the reason, I guess, a reason for that was in health, when it comes to psychological distress, as many of us are aware, it's often viewed as disorder. And what that means is there's a focus on chemical imbalances in the brain or a biological response, where the trauma-informed movement looks at what's happening for a person rather than the labels. And I fell in love with that concept and wanted to run with that concept. And hence, here I am now. I do have a background that I have experienced significant trauma. So a gang assault in 1991, so I was a very young girl. And I did have to recover from that. It was something that went before the courts and a penalty was received by the perpetrators. However, as a young minor, my parents had no idea about compensation or seeking support. So that was something I had to work through pretty much on my own. And it probably wasn't till my late 30s, early 40s that I started to find the right therapist and tools to work with. And that was a therapist who was trauma-informed and understood what was happening for me. And so that's what I was thinking today we could talk about, because even whether we recognize it or not, we're all going through a trauma in a global pandemic. So we're facing constant changes. Things change rapidly. And we have a fear of infection, our health, our safety. And also there's lots of insecurity. Are we going to keep our jobs? Is the food going to be available in the supermarkets? So they're all things that do amount to what we call big T trauma. Now, that might sound a bit strange. What's big T trauma? So here in Australia, we refer to big T trauma and little t trauma. So big T trauma is stuff like, it can be assaults, it can be bullying, it can be domestic violence, it can be unsafe communities, war zones, natural disasters like pandemics, floods, fires, where little t trauma is less common and it's more wrapped up with the sexual abuses of childhood. So it's a particular type of exploitation and abuse, and it generally has specific types of effects. So I'm not focusing on that, excuse me, I'm focusing on the big T trauma that most of us will have experienced, well, 2 in 3 most likely will have experienced. So any questions or thoughts so far, or want me to keep
I just want to stress that to our listeners, so we're not downplaying the little t traumas today.
No.
It's just a conversation that we're having. I think we're going to just direct it around the big t traumas. Those little t traumas are definitely important, and definitely to the people that are experiencing them, very big. It's just on a on a community spectrum that we're speaking of big T and small t's today.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, not downplaying the little t trauma. I think, so I don't know what's happened in other places in the world, but I know with the Me Too movement and also here in Australia, we had the Crown inquiry into the sexual abuse of children. So it has been highlighted and it is significant. But today I just thought I would focus on the more generalized form of emotional trauma to keep it a bit more specific. Yeah. So I guess in terms of a definition, so SAMHSA, so they're the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. They're located in the USA and they lead the way, excuse me, I've got a frog in the throat. They lead the way on what we call the trauma-informed movement. And they give it a definition, and it's around the 3 E's. So event, experience, effect. And they define trauma as an outcome from an event or a series of events. And that's explained or experienced as physically or emotionally harmful or life-threatening and has lasting adverse effects on a person's functioning and well-being. So as I referred to, there's the big T and the little t trauma, so we can separate that out a little bit. But in terms of trauma, I was just thinking the neuroscience gives us a lot of information on how this works in our body. So when you think about trauma, it's not just bang, an event happens. It's about the dose, it's about the frequency, and also depends on the developmental age you're at when it happens. So how we respond in traumatic events depends on the dose and the amount of doses we receive over our lifetime. Now, I'm just thinking, I've got some notes here. Yeah, so this sort of explains, you've got two people in a bank and say the bank's undergoing a robbery. So one person might go on to experience, say, symptoms that would give them a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress. And another person bounces back quite quickly. So neuroscience gives us a way to understand why you can have two people who respond and are affected quite differently. And it comes down to, you can have one person who may have gone through life pretty healthy and well with minimal exposure to trauma. So when they're exposed to an event, they can bounce back fairly quick. Where another person, say when they were 5, their parents divorced, they went to school, they got bullied, then say they experienced an assault and then next minute, bang, they're in a robbery. Their body hits a dose response where it manifests with adverse effects that are long term. So that's one way to think that neuroscience has given us about why you can have different people respond differently. So yeah, being exposed to trauma as a young person, it does shape and change the way our brain wires. And I know that when you look at information, especially with the ACEs study, so that's the Adverse Childhood Experiences study, they'll talk about what's happened in the first 18 years of life. But we know from neuroscience that a female wired brain takes 25 years to mature, where a male wired brain can take up to 35 years. So that's your development period. So things that happen in that time period can wire and shape your brain. So it's pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, wow.
So I've got a question, Kim. You mentioned about, so it's all about, today we are touching this topic and you're sharing your own experiences as well. In terms of that, trauma can be defined or designed for different age groups, different styles and different types of trauma they can experience. For you as a person, like what would you have experienced since you had early stages of your journey, that when you were young and then you had this, and now you are at a stage where you have overcome and you're still grieving or still struggling or still trying to overcome certain aspects of that trauma. But my question is like, does trauma define your emotional well-being in a way? You know how we say that emotions or our well-being is our food, also is our well-being. And that also can cause, if you overdo or overthink and overthink food-wise, but also and if you're playing sports and if you can't play certain things, and if you want certain things and you don't get certain things, that also can lead to a lot of depression or trauma sort of thing. So for you, as you mentioned, the big T trauma, which is all the sexual abuse and domestic violence, which is in this current age of time, where we are seeing lots of COVID situation, uncertainty, and lots of separations, lots of issues. In that regard, what would be your resonation, or what will be your advice, guidance to those people who are listening today, to give how do you deal with this emotional well-being, which is a fix throughout and through in?
Yeah, so I guess the two key points I would stress, first of all, is recognizing when we're having a trauma response. And then the second is knowing quick, simple things to do to respond to that. Have I understood your question right so far? You're asking me what would I do? Yeah, so recognizing a trauma response. So when somebody is recognizing that you're in a trauma response, or recognizing someone else is having a trauma response. So what that is, understanding that when we're threatened, whether that threat's real or perceived,
Mm.
our body will flood with adrenaline and cortisol. And that initiates that fight, flight, freeze. And I also add in please. So the fight, flight, freeze, please response. So what does that look like? Okay, so I'm just going to pull up my notes here, because I've written a few little notes so I don't forget anything. Okay, so hang on, it's actually on my slide. No wonder I can't find things. Okay, so when it comes to the fight, if we're looking at somebody or we're observing ourselves, argumentative, defiant, someone who can't keep still, you're agitated. When it comes to the flight, what's that look like? It's the avoiding, withdrawing, isolating, scanning for danger, what we call hypervigilance. It can be rapid talking or someone yelling because they want to be heard. So the freeze response, forgetful, they put their keys down, can't remember where they put their keys on, they did this and I don't know what I did. It's that forgetfulness because you're not present. You're in a state of almost paralysis and dissociating to engage with the present. It's the please response. I'm sure all of us know or have done ourselves that total people pleasing thing, or oh, I'm so sorry, oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. It's that. That's what it can look like. And I'm not saying it always looks like that. It can look like any bits of that. In terms of feeling, how might it feel? It's a feeling of anger, explosive temper, snappy. It can be the feeling of fear, frequently worrying. It can be the feeling of numbness, unable to identify our feelings, not knowing what we're feeling. It can be rapid cycling feelings that happen so quickly that it's hard to pinpoint them. It can be a feeling of shame and distrust. So that's ways to recognize it, whether you're looking at it or whether you're feeling it. So for many of us, like I said, whether you're exposed in a real trauma event or you can have a trigger. So there's a stimuli. So it might be a sight, a sound, a smell, a taste, a feeling, and it triggers a flashback memory to a traumatic event. And boom, your body has the same response because it remembers the score. And it's a complete survival mechanism. It's there to protect us. But now you're responding as though there's this massive trauma, and there may not be. So to onlookers, they're going, this person's mad, or this person's a drama king or queen, or reacting completely out of context. Generally, that's an indicator. Trauma's at play. Something's going on here. This person's body's being flooded with cortisol, adrenaline. So what can we do? Okay, this is where, when our body's flooded with adrenaline and cortisol, we need to engage in high intensity activity for 3 minutes. Very, very quick. So it could be doing star jumps. It can be running up and down steps. It can be going for a brisk walk, just for 3 minutes, rapidly. And then once we've used that up, we bring in the calming process. Beck, you look like you wanted to ask something.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, so for the members, if the ones that are onlooking, so if you're watching your family member, a partner or a friend, having these reactions to the trauma triggers, how would you recommend to suggest, okay, maybe we need to do some high intense activities? Because I know for myself that it's, it's really hard to be in that trauma state. And to then, let alone have somebody else recognize it before myself to then suggest that. So how would you have any suggestions for, for if you're onlooking?
I don't know. I don't think there's one straight answer for this because people are unique and different. A suggestion can be like, one thing I do know is when a person's in a trauma state, when their trauma's triggered, and they're engaging in a stress response. So if we think of our brain, like say a fist, the frontal lobe, so that's where we plan, we organize, we execute decisions, that goes offline and you're in survival mode, reacting.
Yeah.
So there's no point coming in with talking, lots of talking, because it's not going to come through. It's simple stuff like, hey, let's go for a walk. And brisk walk, or, oh, let's do very simple, just simple and do.
Yeah.
No cognitive therapy talking. That doesn't work at this stage. So it's just get that physical level up so that we can use up the cortisol and adrenaline, and then we can look at the calming. And once those two things take place, then we can chat if the person wants to and they feel safe to do so. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just on that extension, like what Vic said, like what I wanted to check is like, how do we ability when you have triggered with trauma, you acknowledge that yes, you are suffering from certain things or you can't. So your inability and ability to do things is different when you are in trauma, when you have acknowledged. You are now more fearful and not fearless. So you want to do steps at a time, or think and do, or more analytical and do, and then you suppress your ability or inability to do things becomes a big stigma as well.
Yeah.
For you, what was your experience in that? How did you overcome those kind of hurdles when you had that trauma? So your ability to do, how did you manage to overcome?
I didn't manage for many years because I didn't recognize it to begin with.
Right. Okay.
And so, like I said earlier, I was in my early 40s, late 30s when I started to recognize the effects of trauma. And then that helped me to seek the right type of a therapist who was trauma informed. And it was, I guess, through getting psychoeducation from a trauma informed lens rather than a diagnostic label. So the most common is depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress. For people who've experienced more extensive complex traumas from young childhood, it tends to be in the personality disorder range. But basically we can look at it as trauma and complex trauma. So what did I do? It took, I'm not going to say there was a magic bullet and it happened awesome and that I never experienced things again. I do sometimes, but it has alleviated, and it's basically about catching yourself in a trauma response state and then initiating very simple things that you don't have to really think about, you can just engage in, like the intense activity. There's things like tapping, just tapping your forehead, tapping under the eye, nose, chin, your chest. But that may not work if it's in the office, right? If you're in the office, you're at work and boom, something's triggering you or an event's happened, that's not going to help. So there's other things like in your mind, you can just say to yourself, and this is to stop the loop, because the loop happens in our head. We start thinking it's round and round and round. So you go, what are 3 things I can see? And I call this getting out of your mind and into your senses. Okay, so what are 3 things I see? I see the door, I see a chair, I see a desk. What are 3 things I can smell? And then you keep going through your senses, 3 things I hear, 3 things I feel. I feel my clothes on my body, my bottom's on the chair, my feet are on the floor. Meditation, if you can meditate and shift your mind, shift your focus, stop that looping, whatever record's on play in your brain, shift it, change the channel. So this is where I got into chakra meditation and worked with energy points in my body. Now that may not work for everybody, but that worked for me, and pairing that with affirmations. So when I would meditate on my root chakra, I would be thinking things like, I feel safe. So security, safety. On your heart chakra, I feel love. And then, on your solar plexuses, I'm powerful. So reaffirming positives and telling yourself the stuff you wished you would hear from others. You need to become your own. I think it goes back to,
I think with the emotional trauma, it definitely has connection with loss of power, loss of strength. You want to sort of remove yourself from that victim state and take that power back, and connecting with your inner strength again. Everything that as we're speaking through now, it's definitely I've got downloads of just inner strength, power, control, And I think as we get stuck in those loops, we definitely lose all of that, because, you know, we remove ourselves from the strength to, I can't control my thoughts, I can't control my vision, I
Yes.
can't control the exterior energy, you know, and that then becomes the internal energy that we carry, and, you know, we then start to project. And I think then everything will trigger us, because we're automatically in a state of flight or fright. So, you know, definitely.
Absolutely. And what you're talking about is what we call the Cartman's drama triangle, where we bounce from that victim state, and then we'll bounce into a perpetrator state of blaming, or you are, or the world's, it's all their fault, like the perpetrating. Then the savior or judge, you know, where we want to save everything. And so you bounce around in that. And the trick is to catch yourself in that, and then shift to what we call the empowerment dynamic, the TED model. So instead of being a victim, we say, what do I want to create now? What can I create? Not what can't I do, what can I do? And then instead of perpetrator or aggressor, we go, coach, how can I, challenger, what do I want to challenge? And then instead of savior, we turn into the coach. Just what do I want to teach? What do I want to be known? You know, so shifting that headset from that drama triangle to the empowerment model.
And do you think that everybody goes through those stages that have experienced the emotional trauma? Like, are we all a victim at one point, or the coach? Or is it okay to miss the coach to share?
To be honest, if we look at the ACEs study, which is one of the biggest studies done, so 17,000 participants. So this was done, so 95 to 97, I think it was, over in the US. But 2 in 3 people, 2 in 3, so 66% of participants reported a trauma exposure, at least one or more, up to the age of 18. So that's a lot that's 66%. That's a lot.
Yeah, wow. Yeah.
And then if you factor in epigenetics, so what I mean by epigenetics, so basically epigenetics is you experience a trauma, it imprints on your genetic system. Then you have children. They have a chance of inheriting that genetic makeup. They themselves may never have experienced a trauma, but still go on to develop what comes to be labeled as depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, or do you know what I mean? But yet they'll go, oh, I've never had a trauma, ever.
Yeah.
And we know 90% of people who access mental health services, they do report a history of trauma. That's how common it is. Yeah. So I'm not saying that every person experiences it or that they experience it in the same way, but I think a lot of people...
Can that be to just the surroundings? Like if you're growing up and your parents experience a trauma, is that classified as a genetic trauma, even though it's not genetics before you're born? Is that?
Yeah. So trauma.
Am I understanding that correctly?
So for me, I would go back to the definition. It's the event, it's the experience of it, and are there long-lasting adverse effects? Now, if that's a parent that's had an exposure to a traumatic event, whether that be the loss of their parents, or say they've gone to war and come back, or say they're in a country that they had to flee from, so they came to Australia or to New Zealand or wherever as a refugee, and if they experienced that and that had lasting effects, adverse effects, they have the capacity to pass that genetic material on to their offspring.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Yeah, that's definitely a part of it that I didn't consider in the genetic trauma. Yeah. It's already a mark on our, you know, as you say, we experience traumas differently. You know, if you and I were both in a bank robbery, I've had no trauma, yet my trauma from my parents or grandparents, that's already 2 or 3 marks of trauma on my genetics, that then that trauma that I experience is probably, you know, could be tipped off, and that's when I can, you know, everything can start tumbling down. It's definitely something.
And it's also it's not just as straightforward as that. It can be what one person perceives as traumatic, another person may not. They might go,
that's correct. Yeah.
You know?
And I think that's as far as I understood it, as, you know, like it's just experienced differently with the way that you see things and handle things to the way that I do. But there's another layer there for me from today. Yeah, definitely.
For me, when I started to learn about this, which was 2017, and it was from a professor in the UK who's a professor in psychology, but he deals with suicide. And he came over here to Australia to do a workshop with our department in health. And he was saying, you know, there's way more evidence suggesting trauma is highly correlated with suicide, completed suicide or acts of or attempts, than what there is chemical imbalances. And that for me was the trigger that made me start to look into this. And when I read through it, I went, this just makes so much sense. This explains so much more than this chemical imbalance in the brain that find me the evidence that it's non-existent, that we get sold, you know. So for me, I'm a definite advocate of this way of thinking about significant psychological distress.
Yes, yeah.
So, Kim, I have got another resonation I wanted to ask you about the trauma that we have got, as I said, like different types. And for you particularly, physical trauma, mental trauma, we talk about lots of emotionals are attached to it. Even for friend, relatives that we observe or that we have witnessed certain incidents, certain events that could also have a lasting impression on one's emotional well-being. In terms of that, what would be your, like, as you said rightly, that yes, first is acknowledgement. So first thing, are you grieving into a trauma, or have you recognized that you are into trauma? But trauma, there is no answer to it as such. But I feel that there is one way or silver bullet to solve the trauma. It's an emotional challenge every time that you face, and you keep struggling and you keep challenging on that. But just from that angle, I just wanted to ask you, emotional well-being point of view, what would be your take on, like, okay, if such things happen to anyone, to yourself, which you have experienced, it's a one-off event or regular ongoing, you have experienced, whatever it may be, in terms of getting over the emotional well-being factor that everybody is looking for your well-being. You know, some people take medication, some people don't take medication, some take, as you said, some people takes normal exercises, small, simple things that you can do, which means being yourself, or who being yourself, making yourself, bringing back and acknowledging that, yes, I can do it, I can't do it. So just to become on that resilience, stronger point of resilience of a human mind and body, what would be your suggestions to say that, okay, I have experienced it and I have done simple things and I tried this. If it didn't work, I still tried different way, and keep trying is the only way, you think? Or you think that they should go for some professional advice, help, or they can do their own? What's your...
My response to that is whatever works. I think it's important. So I think it's important for people to go to someone they trust for a start, because a lot of times when it comes to trauma, there's safety stuff around that. So first you have to feel safe with whoever you go to.
Yes.
So we all, and for some people that might be the mental health sector, that might be a GP and getting a referral to a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or even it could be, I guess, a dietitian. You know, it's a holistic way of thinking about the whole person. It can also be outside of that, though. I'm aware of people who go and see spiritualists, and that's where they find their sense of safety and grounding. And they have, I'm just trying to think of the name, energy work. There's a particular name for it. And that works for them. If that works for you, that works for you. You want it to work, right? We want it to be effective and something that works. If that's medication, that's what it is.
Yeah.
You know,
And
there's,
like you
I don't think there's
said, I
shame in
everyone
any
is
of that.
No, definitely. And I would agree with you. I think, you know, everyone is different. We've all experienced the trauma differently. We, like you said, we can be, you know, standing right beside each other, but we're an individual person. And I think, you know, we could talk on this topic for hours. You know, there's so many layers to emotional trauma and how we are all affected by it. And I think, yeah, you're right. I would agree with you and support you there that everybody responds to therapy differently. And I think we can't be narrow-minded about how we treat the trauma and how we support and hold the people that are going through the different triggers and trauma
Absolutely.
issues.
I just want to bring to the table, there's some information on overseas, and I don't know exactly what culture, but I looked into it several years ago. It's a society that has shaman, and when they see somebody in what Western countries call breaking down, they call it waking up. That's the sign of a healer. Yeah. And they treasure that person. And do you know that person over in their cultures, they don't have years and years of psychotic episodes with these people. They have healers who are revered and honored, where in our culture, we have statistics showing years and years and years of recovery and episodes because of the stigma and the total different language we use. You know, instead of working with that energy and looking at what we can do. And therefore, I think, you know, whatever mode a person relates to and is meaningful for them, I think that is what's going to get the best outcomes for that person.
I think that answers with what your statement you made earlier was acceptance of what you have triggered this. That's really the key to actually make it more approachable, acceptable, adaptable, and also talked about, rather than having a stigma and then hiding or hidden. You know, humans should be free-spirited, and this is what our whole topic is all about, is free-spirited. How can humans become free-spirited? And the only way they can become free-spirited if they acknowledge who they are just the way they are, rather than what not they are. And people generally try to adopt what they are not. They want to portray that. And that's where the key factor comes in, acceptance or denial mode, you know.
There's a perfect saying that wraps that up. What we resist persists, but what we look at goes away.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah,
no, definitely. I accept that. Yes, so anything else you think of top of my head that you would like to ask?
I think we're going to put Kim's PowerPoint in the links below, so we're going to share that with our listeners. We weren't able to get that up today, but that's fine. We had a nice chat without it. Kim does have some bonuses for us today, so we're going to put the code there for you to access that as well. So this is just purely for our listeners on our podcast today. So if you are wanting to find out some more, to just follow the links there, and you'll be able to access that through the promo codes that Kim has offered us. And all of Kim's links to her socials and everything will be there as well. So you're able to find her at the Aperture Hub and where she's at.
So I'm just bringing up the slide now. So there's a promo code for anyone who's interested in the meditation bundle. So it's a chakra energy meditation. And there's also just a wellbeing plan for people who have experienced distress in the past and it's impacted them. It just guides you through how to plan for that if that were to happen again, so that you don't have to try and think on your feet whilst you're distressed. Now I'm just trying to find where I've put it. I've got so many files. Here we go. Okay. Make sure I put the right one up. It's this one. Okay. So enter. Has everyone got that in the chat box?
Yeah.
And just I guess another point of importance, one thing I'd just like to highlight is Sometimes talking about distressing stuff or trauma can upset people. It can raise memories that upset them. So there's on pages of this PDF I just shared, which is the slides 26, 7 and 8. I've just got all the international helplines. So I've got Australia, New Zealand and international in case people feel they need to debrief or talk to someone.
Yeah, I guess because of the common humans, we are all humans. We are all having this traumas, so-called, but emotional well-being is affected through all these things that we face. And common behavioral responses for this trauma is probably anger, anxiety, fear. All of these are all common human responses that we do when trauma occurs. But it's the challenge is like, how do you overcome yourself with all these doubts, fear, anger, anxiety, all sorts of things. These are all emotional challenges. And then there could be physical trauma, whether accident or near-death experience or violence or, physically, those kind of challenges. So those can be treated, possibly a little bit help and support from the medical aids and medical things. However, mental and your emotional, it's still there, even if those are physically healed, that mental is also there along with that.
Yes.
So in terms of that, I think it's a good responses from you that we could like to have our audiences to understand that everybody has got some or the other trauma, whether small, big, doesn't matter. That trauma, everybody has to uncover themselves, acknowledge themselves, and actually deal with it on their own. But also take the help whenever you need it and whatever you need it, basically. But I think well-being and freedom of free-spirited, which is our title, where we always say that become free-spirited. The more you're free-spirited, the more it's better for your well-being. And that's where I will end at that. Does that make sense, Bake? What do you think?
Yes, definitely. I think you've wrapped it up very well there, Shailesh.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. So thank you so much, Kim, for giving us your time and then talking about this emotional trauma, which definitely everyone will resonate some or the other form. And if they need help, you are there for them to help.
I do provide mentoring service. I'm not a therapist as such, but I do mentoring. If anyone's interested, there is a link in that file. Thank you guys for having me, and for people listening, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thanks, Kim.
Bye.
Bye for now.